Jacob.
I'm Yuri.
And we're going for a drive.
The newly redesigned 2022 Honda Civic Touring.
And the 2021 Toyota Corolla Apex Edition.
And previously we reviewed the last Honda Civic against that style Toyota Corolla, and that got over 1 million views, so we are back to retest these best-selling cars in Canada.
So normally we launch these cars, but Yuri, let's just give them a send in the right gear right now. Gonna downshift in the second. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Ooh, Corolla took off a little bit better, but I got a shift, and then the Civic catches up. Pretty damn even.
They're pretty much the same speed, but just for fun, let's get to the horsepower and torque.
This Corolla has 169 horsepower and 151 pound-feet of torque from a naturally aspirated 2-liter 4-cylinder.
And what about this Civic?
It's a carryover engine with a little bit more horsepower and torque, 180 horsepower, 177 pound-feet of torque from a 1.5-liter turbo 4-cylinder.
And this Honda Civic does have a continuously variable transmission, where that Corolla Apex actually has a manual transmission.
So bonus points to Toyota for actually having a manual option, because the Honda Civic no longer has a manual option in the regular Civic trims. You're gonna have to wait for the SI and the Type R.
But the last comparison we did with the Civic and Corolla, they were both CVTs, so it's fresh in our memory what a very normal Corolla would be like.
And let's start with the CVT in that Honda, because it's actually really good. It's barely even noticeable, the fact that it's a CVT.
Yeah, for normal putting around, it's great. You floor it, you get power pretty quickly, it pulls nicely, but off a launch, you pretty much have no kick at all.
And by the way, if you're shopping for either of these two cars and you live in the United States, there's a TrueCar link in the description.
We're gonna be doing reviews for the rest of our lives, so the sooner you subscribe, the sooner you can use our reviews to help you make a great purchase decision.
Oh!
Bro, we literally have another like 30 years of this.
And the best part about this Corolla is launching it, because you get so much tire squeal because of the manual transmission. You launch wherever you want, you can turn off traction control easily, and the best part of this is it also has IMT mode, intelligent manual transmission, so it'll actually rev match for you. And the funniest part of that is using it in combination with the adaptive cruise. You never have to touch the gas in traffic. You just shift, the car adds gas as it needs to, and then that's it, you just use the clutch. And we did measure the 0 to 60 between both of these, and they're almost identical depending on how good of a launch you get. They're in the low, mid 8-second range.
With the 1-foot rollout, asterisk.
And you may be wondering why we have this Apex trim in the Corolla. This is currently the closest that we can match these based on what Toyota Canada and Honda Canada have, because we needed a sedan to compare against the new Civic, so this is as close as we can get.
Because there is no hatch in this Civic yet, but it has been shown in renders.
Yeah, should we just get to the looks right now?
Okay, starting with the front end, this Honda looks like an Accord now.
It really does, and it looks fantastic because both of us really like how the previous gen, well, the current gen Accord looks.
Yeah, they dropped all the craziness from the last gen Civic and made it fully normal inside and out. Pretty much this whole car is dialed down and pretty much perfect.
Yeah, dialed down in the overstyling department, but dialed up in the luxury department.
But the front end of that Apex does look totally unreal. Definitely the best looking Corolla they produce right now.
Yeah, it looks really good. It's pretty aggressive considering it's a Corolla.
But headlight wise, we're gonna have to give it to the Honda for sure. And then side profile, I think they both look really nice. The Civic does look more tame. I'm gonna give side profile to the Corolla.
I'm also gonna give it to the Corolla, but the Civic definitely looks classier for the side, but the paint looks really nice. As I'm watching you roll right now, that pearl and that white looks awesome.
Well, your gray with the black at the bottom in that Corolla does sparkle very nicely too. So I think tie on the paint in these specs.
And in terms of wheels, the Corolla definitely wins, at least in the Apex spec.
Yeah, 100%. But the wheels in this Civic are nice. They are a nice little change up, but they're not too extreme or anything.
Yeah, they're more of a luxurious style. It makes sense for that.
And what would be the Continental recommended tire if you want two of the best-selling cars in North America?
The Extreme Contact DWS 06.
So now moving on to the back, we both kind of have okay taillights, nothing too special, even though this is an upgrade. We don't have the lobster claws anymore, but I don't really miss them in the Civic.
Yeah, kind of average on both taillights, so I don't really know who to give the win to, just give them a tie.
And as for rear ends, the Civic rear bumper doesn't have any of those weird fake vents or anything. It's got an exhaust that goes down, very unoffensive.
Yeah, it looks really good from behind. The Corolla definitely looks way better from behind because we have a really cool exhaust tip that Brad from European Automotive said looked like a shot glass, and yeah, he's definitely right.
He's got the spoiler on there too. It does look more cool race car, so it's gonna win, but I think a normal Corolla versus this normal Civic, the Civic is kind of a little bit classier.
It's definitely classier looking, it's not cooler looking, but since we have a sport tuned exhaust on this Corolla, let's take a listen to the outside. Yeah, you can barely tell it's sport tuned.
So overall, looks-wise, are we giving it to the new Civic or are we giving it to the Corolla Apex?
It's hard to say. If you want the classier, kind of better looking car, I'm gonna have to give it to the Civic, but if you want the cooler looking car and more unique, definitely giving it to the Corolla. So it kind of just depends on what you want.
Corolla Apex beats the regular Civic Touring, but the Civic Touring beats the regular Corolla sedan. And before we move on to the interior stuff and switch it up, then go to Cliche Corner, let's talk about the Apex trim.
So there's only 150 of these available for Canada, 50 of which are in manual, and in the States there's 6,000 of these and only 120 of those in manual. So shout out Canada for actually buying more manuals because that ratio is so much better in Canada.
So that gets a body kit, it's got the wing on the back, and then it's got some different suspension as well.
Yeah, so the suspension is completely retuned for this car. I actually find it to be the Achilles heel of this car. I really don't like it, but I'll get to that during the handling portion. But it does help with the stance because it's 0.6 inches lower. And we also get those cool wheels, which are actually lighter weight flow-formed wheels.
So now let's switch cars up, talk about the interiors, make our way down to Cliche Corner for a little bit of handling. Not too much since they're not the craziest handling cars, and figure out which one we'll pick as the winner.
I am genuinely excited to go sit back in that Civic interior.
Chirping from first to second, driving manual, I kind of like this.
Yo, I don't even care about any of that stuff because apparently I'm now in a BMW.
That is a very luxurious interior, but I found hopping from the Civic to the Corolla, I'm actually a little bit more comfortable in these seats.
The seats in the Corolla are actually really, really good. They're nicely bolstered, but these Honda seats are also awesome. Not as well bolstered, but they're leather in here.
Okay, the Honda seats are electric on passenger and driver, where this Corolla is all manual, and this one does not have lumbar support, and neither does the Civic, which kind of sucks. Looking at the general interiors of both of these, the Honda looks a lot more like an Accord now, which is cool because it does have the Accord style infotainment, which is a huge improvement over the last Civic's infotainment, which they totally butchered at launch with the touch slider volume.
And this is actually the biggest infotainment that they've put into any Honda product because we have the Touring, which is the top trim. Everything below this trim gets a smaller screen.
And looking at the general interior on this Apex, we've got white all along the top and these gray seats. This looks fan-friggin-tastic for a Corolla.
However, this Civic one is just so premium looking and feeling. We have this really nice metal looking vent, definitely feels pretty good. It goes across the whole dash, even though the whole thing's not a vent. You can control them with these manual knobs. Speaking of knobs, the climate control vents, amazing.
Yeah, hard buttons for everything climate on the Civic and for the Corolla. That's great because so many companies are going in the completely wrong direction with everything capacitive touch, and it's a total nightmare.
And where other companies are also screwing up, lots of gloss black. But Honda has done a pretty damn good job of eliminating gloss black. Down at the bottom, we have this really cool pattern, but unfortunately they included it up by the vents, but you're not gonna touch that too much.
Yeah, and this Corolla's got a little bit of gloss black. Generally, it's okay.
So now let's dig into these infotainments. Let's start with the Honda because it is all new. The resolution on the screen is really good. We do have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and they are wireless, but you can also use it wired, which is really nice. And if you get a lower trim, it is only wired.
And then this Corolla also has Apple CarPlay and finally Android Auto, which it didn't have in the last video we did, but is definitely a muddier looking screen than in the Honda. If you're using your Apple CarPlay, if I click Maps, it'll go to my Google Maps. If I click Phone, it'll go to my Apple CarPlay phone. And in the Honda Civic, you don't have a hotkey to get to your Apple CarPlay projection, but there are a lot of nice icons and it's pretty easy to click to get to. But they both have a volume knob, which is amazing, but only the Corolla has a tuning knob.
Yeah, the Civic has a tuning button, which thank you for at least including something, and then we have a home and a back button. So I think all the functional buttons are there, and this infotainment is miles, like light years ahead of what they previously had in the Civic.
Yeah, and I like how it's all color-coded, but I'm pretty sure we said when we first reviewed that Accord, this would be great in the Civic. So it's like, they kind of did what we said just 4 years later. So thank you, Honda. for doing it.
And we do have a really good backup camera in the Civic. It's higher res than in the Corolla.
And the Corolla, you can work with it, it's fine. But what's nice is that Civic doesn't have that stupid click your right signal blind spot monitoring screen anymore. It's just normal blind spot monitoring, which is perfect. Both of them have it.
Yeah, so they did get rid of the camera on the right side. They did add a camera for the radar sensors. You can't actually see that camera, but now it's not a radar system, it's a camera system. So Honda sensing has been significantly improved, and it actually works at low speeds now, and the lane keep assist has also been improved.
Yes, it's fantastic in the Honda Civic, and you can see when there's trucks around you and everything. It's really, really good. But this Corolla in manual only has lane departure assist, but a Corolla in CVT will have the full lane centering, but not as good as that Honda.
And Yuri, before we continue on, I'm gonna put it in sport mode. I'm gonna send it. Ready?
You're so slow.
It's not bad though, and the CVT actually simulates gears pretty decently.
Jacob, I'm gonna downshift and pass. And even though this may not be much faster, it feels so much more exciting and engaging. But realistically, if you're getting the Apex trim of a Corolla, you should probably just get an 86.
Yeah, the thing is, with that Corolla being an Apex edition, it's no faster than a regular Corolla, so I think they definitely missed the mark on the Apex.
Yeah, but it looks cool though. I mean, the fact that they're selling so many CVTs, the whole market has missed the mark on what a cool car is.
And that thing handles really well, and so does the Civic, and we are on the way to Cliche Corner, so we will assess the handling soon. But back to this interior.
Sitting behind yourself, Jacob is 6'1.5". How do you fit behind both of these cars? Which one is more comfortable?
I fit really comfortably behind myself in both of these cars, but I'm extra comfortable in the Civic.
Yeah, it's got that little bit of bonus space if you're gonna use it as an Uber. And then since we're both dads now, we gotta deal with child seats and stuff. With the child seats in the back seats, they both fit very well. Putting the child seat in both of the back seats is very easy, but which one has more room if you have to sit in front of that in the passenger seat, Jacob?
That would actually be the Civic, and it's totally livable. Like, my knees aren't even close to the dash.
And the Corolla is just fine as well, right?
Yeah, again, still livable, but way more comfortable in the Civic. And the steering wheels in both are really nice, but I do prefer the one in the Civic. It does feel more premium, and I actually like the steering feel even more in the Civic. We do have paddles, considering this is a CVT. Wouldn't really use them though.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the paddles in this Corolla ever because I got this like manual. I actually like the steering feel and everything a lot in the Corolla, but I think it's just because it's a sportier car. And as for button layout, they did such a good job in the Civic of simplifying what was a little bit weird in the last gen.
And there's actually an innovative thing in this Honda where both of these airbags are a world's first, where it's got like a donut shape. So it's actually supposed to prevent like brain injuries, which is really cool of Honda to do that.
Shout out safety.
And the Civic has all new suspension. The bushings have been changed. Like a bunch of stuff has been changed, completely retuned. It's 20% better over train tracks. So let's test that right now. Well, that's at least 20% better.
Apex was okay. If you're going faster, it kind of glides over nicer, but at 50 kilometers an hour, it was kind of bumpy.
I can't say enough good things about how the suspension in the Civic feels. It is incredible. This is literally a baby Accord. We love the Accord, the way it looked, the way it drove. This is an Accord now, and it's just all the best parts of an Accord at a lower price. And the suspension in the Corolla Apex is just way too stiff. I don't think they got the damping right. Yes, it's track tuned. However, 99.9% of people that are gonna buy this are not gonna be on a racetrack. It's really noticeable on the highway. It's just very bouncy.
But a normal Corolla would be fine.
Yeah, a normal Corolla would be totally fine because we've driven one and the suspension is just way better.
So now quickly onto the gauge clusters. This Corolla does have an analog speedo in the middle, analog tach on the left, and a little screen on the right, where the Civic has been completely revamped and it's all digital now.
It's all digital only on the Touring trim. Everything below that is like a half-digit kind of mix thing. But this full digital cluster is really nice. There's no lag. It's very customizable. You have a bunch of different modes that you can change. I love these gauges.
Yeah, it's cool having the two round circles or having the bars, and then you can also do a minimal version of both so that when you're in your full radar cruise control, it gets rid of all the stuff on the sides. I would say they absolutely nailed it, and I'm so excited to see what the Type R gauges are gonna look like.
Oh dude, I'm so excited for this generation of Type R. It's gonna be unreal. And in terms of drive modes in the Civic, we have Eco, Normal, and Sport. And in the Corolla, there's just manual transmission.
Yeah, you can turn off rev matching or keep it on, but to turn off traction, you need to be fully stopped, which does kind of suck. So now moving on to the cup holders, We have the same cup holders as last time in the Corolla. They're pretty good. It's been totally redesigned in the Civic to be a normal cup holder, and I'm not mad at that at all.
We do have a wireless charger up front, as we do in the Corolla. And what about the visors?
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Yes!
Fail in the Corolla.
Ah, good job, Civic.
So overall interiors, who are we giving it to?
Hands down, not even a competition, the Civic wins.
Tech-wise and everything, yeah, but I mean, this white, I think, redeems the look of the Corolla, and looks-wise, I think the Corolla is more impressive.
Looks-wise, I wouldn't care how it looked. The function and everything and how it feels, 100% Civic.
Yeah, great job on updating the infotainment and bringing it to a hard button standard. Every car manufacturer, go from your crazy last gen Civic to your current gen Civic, the world will be a better place. Hard buttons, hard knobs, stuff like that. Please, 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 please.
And in terms of overall interior, I think the Civic now really competes with like a Mazda 3 and a Hyundai Elantra. Like that Corolla interior pretty much almost doesn't even compete with this interior anymore.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. Okay, so now should we go through Cliche Corner, do some handling for fun, and then get to the final winner?
Yeah, we should definitely do that. So let's send it through Cliche Corner. And the power delivery on this Civic is awesome with this turbo. You definitely feel some power come on in the upper rev range once you hit that boost.
And I love the naturally aspirated, predictable pull of this Corolla with the manual gearbox. It's so enjoyable for a normal commuter car.
But driving them back to back, the Civic just feels faster.
Debatable with the manual transmission.
Okay, sending it into Cliche Corner. The steering feels really good in the Civic, and it really wants to just turn in.
I'm getting like no tire squeal. I feel super planted and like very little body roll in the Corolla.
It's actually unbelievable how well this turns in. The Civic feels really good, really well planted.
But with some performance tires, I bet you would feel a lot better. This feels so good for a Corolla.
Yeah, all right, let's switch up the cars and come to our final conclusion.
And before we dive back into Cliche Corner, I did notice that both of these cars now have a proximity touch on the door handle, where last time the Civic did have a hard button you have to push.
Yeah, that is a noticeable improvement on both of these. And the first thing I noticed getting back into this Corolla is the visibility isn't as good as that Honda. I think it has to do with the windshield angle.
And then the Corolla does have an alright sound system, but the Honda Civic sound system is so much better. It's really good. And the first Cliche Corner bump, pretty smooth in the Civic.
Not so good in the Corolla.
Let's see how much tire squeal I'm gonna get through the...
Oh, heel toe downshift.
I definitely hear a lot of tire squeal.
Oh yeah, lots of tire squeal in the Corolla. I keep forgetting what car I'm in, but it does feel better than that Civic.
Yeah, but the Civic, you can feel it wants to rotate. I swear, when they make the SI and Type R, it is going to be nutty. Overall, fun-wise, the Corolla hands down wins because of the manual. You just can't get more fun than a manual transmission.
Yeah, manual and actually handling-wise, this is definitely a better suspension for handling. However, the horsepower does not make this more fun than that. So I feel like you should just get any other Corolla instead of the Apex.
But if you have the Apex, then you can kind of sleeper car and chase people and like eat outside your snack bracket.
No, you really can't, not with your horsepower.
So let's get to the price of both of these.
Okay, so this Corolla Apex is $27,440.
Canadian.
And that Honda Civic Touring is $30,265.
Canadian.
And if we had the Civic Sport, which would be more comparable to the Apex, it would be $27,865, within a couple $100 of each other.
So where does that leave us for this comparison? The new Civic, did it pretty much destroy everything about the old Civic and make it the winner again?
Yeah, I definitely think it did. Although the Corolla is actually rated for slightly better gas mileage, everything about that Civic is unbelievably good.
They absolutely killed it. They didn't screw up anything on this because the manual is coming in the SI and the Type R. The looks are great. The hatch looks kind of weird, but it doesn't exist yet for real, so we can't count that in.
Yeah, so big shout out to Honda for like improvement of the generation, probably.
While everyone's moving to capacitive touch buttons, Honda moved in the right direction with hard buttons and knobs. This is like very, very good for the world.
And if you're shopping for a new Honda Civic or a Toyota Corolla and you live in the United States, click the TrueCar link below. There's a discount when using the Straight Pipes link.
You can also shop for used Honda Civics and used Toyota Corollas using TrueCar. And if you live in Canada, there's a Car Help Canada link below. So question of the last 15 minutes, thank you all for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, consider subscribing. Would you take that exact Apex over this exact Honda Civic Touring? Because I would take that Apex because of the manual transmission, but I would take this Civic over a Corolla CVT, no question.
I would 100% take that Civic over this Corolla, even with this manual transmission. Thank you, Toyota, for including this. But the overall car isn't fun enough to justify the manual, and I really don't like the suspension, so 100% Team Civic.
So let us know what you would pick, this Honda Civic or that Corolla. Let us know what the Corolla would need to change for it to win in the comments below.